Considered by many to be one of the most unique and creative IPs that Nintendo has ever produced, Pikmin exploded onto the scene in 2001 on the Nintendo GameCube as a launch title, alongside Super Smash Bros. Melee and Luigi's Mansion. And out of those three, it's kind of interesting to say that I think Pikmin is the one that I've played the most in recent years. Obviously, Melee is one of my all-time favorite games, and it was one of my most go-to fighting games back in the mid-2000s, maybe a little bit even beyond that, up until Smash 4 came out. But Pikmin, you can play other fighting games. You can play Dragon Ball FighterZ, you can play Soul Calibur 2, you can play, like, ARMS, but when you get right down to it, there's only one Pikmin, okay? When you get right down to it, there's only one Pikmin. Even in the series itself as a whole, I think the original game handles the concept the best. Okay, so what is the concept of Pikmin? So this astronaut, Olimar, is on a mission home, is on his way home after a mission when his spaceship is smacked by a meteor and he comes tumbling down to the planet below and has to survive on this hostile alien world with 30 days of life support. So he can only survive in this planet's hostile environment for about 30 days. He has no real equipment. He has no real way of getting home. He has to repair his ship, but he's not quite sure how he's going to manage it until he discovers, by pure coincidence, these creatures called Pikmin that can be manipulated to help him with these tasks. So you essentially have hordes of Pikmin following behind you, picking things up, breaking down walls, building bridges, performing all of these tasks while you explore the maps and gather your ship materials. Now, the thing that makes this game so interesting is that it is really extremely brutal. Like, I have a very, very hard time imagining that any kid was ever able to play this game, because I played this when I was fairly young. I don't know how young, like 10, 11, 12. When I first played this, right, like years after it first came out, I couldn't finish it because it was just too intense. Like, your Pikmin don't pass out, they don't faint, like, they don't, like, just, you don't bring them back with the Pokemon Center. No, they straight up get eaten alive by the monsters in this game, and you have to repopulate by finding food and then bringing that back to their mothership, the Onion, and having them spit out more seeds so more Pikmin can grow, and you can try again. The enemies in this game, it's one of the very few Nintendo IPs I can think of in which, like, the vast majority of the enemies you go up against are way, way stronger than you are. Like, even, like, minor enemies in this game can do a lot of damage if you're not careful. I was really surprised. Having recently just done a playthrough of Pikmin 3, like, I noticed that, like, Bulborbs were bigger in this game. I noticed they were taking more hits. They were taking out more Pikmin. Like, I don't think it was me not knowing how to play. Like, I think Pikmin 3 straight up, like, made things easier, right? They rebalanced it. While this one pulls no punches. Like, you're gonna have Pikmin, like, get eaten while they're carrying stuff. You're gonna have them, like, get set on fire. You're gonna have, like, situations in which they can't walk along bridges and they drown. They fall off and drown because they're kind of dumb. It is something else, and it's very, very overwhelming. Like, I totally see why this has gone on to be kind of a niche Nintendo series. Out of all the IPs that I've shown to girlfriends over the years, like, I would say the one that they recognize the least is probably Pikmin. Like, Kirby's pretty recognized, Zelda, of course, is instantly recognizable, Mario's pretty popular, Fire Emblem is getting more popular these days. Not quite up to the others levels, but I have met a couple of people who know what the fuck Fire Emblem is, right? Or at least want to get into it, who are interested in it. With Pikmin, most people have never even heard of it. Like, most people don't even know this series exists, and that's kind of a shame, considering how much I enjoy and play these games. But this is not a game meant for a wide audience. Like, this is a burst of inspiration from Shigeru Miyamoto. He had a really unique vision, and he delivered on it. Like, this is one of those games that just defies all probability, right? This is something that really shouldn't have existed because like there's no real audience for it. Not really, like not on a mass scale. Like they're not gonna make a ton of money off Pikmin, possibly ever, but like they still produce them because Miyamoto wants to, and that's something that like I really really admire in a creator, and I think Pikmin is like kind of one of those things that he just really really wants to see succeed somehow, and Pikmin 3 took major strides forward to make that happen. I think Pikmin 3 sort of established a bit more of a mainstream appeal, a bit of a mainstream audience. Like I think a lot more people picked up Pikmin 3 than they did like the other two. So maybe we'll start seeing this game develop a more mainstream following, but right now it feels kind of niche by Nintendo standards. Like compared to Animal Crossing, like Pikmin is like the opposite end of popularity. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, like honestly, like you can't really recreate something like this. Like this, the fact that this game was made at all is very very impressive, and I never get enough of it. It's one of those games that suffers greatly from the fact that it's way too short, but as a result of that, like it's endlessly replayable. Like it feels almost like a Super Nintendo game. It's something you could easily beat in about a day. But because of its difficulty, because of how hard it is to learn, it's very, very possible that first-time players will not even be able to finish it because this is a game that's on a timer. Like, I explicitly remember when this game first came out and I was discussing it with friends, like, everyone who'd heard of it did not want to play it because they found the timer intimidating. They thought it was ridiculous. They thought it was too much. And in a way, I kind of saw what they were coming from. But, like, this game is challenging you. Like, this is a challenge to be overcome. Like, this is a unique IP with a really unique presentation, and it's challenging you to do this. This is very. I would say this is probably the last of the old school Nintendo games, in the sense that like it's more of a challenge than something that like anyone can pick up and play. Like it is. It was meant to be. It was never meant to be this easy thing that you could just breeze through. Like it is. It is what it wants to be, and it's challenging you to rise to its expectations. And as a result of that, like I, a very, very experienced gamer, cannot help but really, really, really adore this series and this IP in general. And the original is still my favorite by far. I think Pikmin 2 made major steps back in a lot of ways. The Pikmin aren't utilized very well. The dungeons aren't very interesting. The maps aren't interesting. The concept isn't as appealing. Like there's a lot wrong with Pikmin 2, but like the original like has aged incredibly well. It is still to this day extremely fun to pick up and play. If they re-release it on Switch, and I imagine they will at some point, it shouldn't be a hard port, especially after Pikmin 3. I would highly suggest you pick it up if you can find an old copy at a used game store or something. Pick it up. Like if you can find it anywhere, like. Pick it up. It is a spectacular experience, one that I would recommend to anyone, and one that a more experienced Nintendo fan, an advanced gamer, can find a lot of value in. But this is not a game for casuals, but if you're not a casual, if you want to prove yourself among the Nintendo elite, this is an absolute must play.